Welcome to the Think Fitness Life podcast, your one-stop shop for exploring the connections between fitness, health, and overall well-being. Join us as we dive deep into all aspects of a balanced and vibrant life, from pushing your limits in the gym to finding peace of mind outside of it. Whether you're a seasoned athlete or just starting your journey, you are in the right place to discover the knowledge and insight to perfect your fitness life.
All right, welcome back to the Think Fitness Life podcast. Today we have a special guest joining the show. Many people have always asked me or wondered when we start talking the word fascia, what does that mean? What does fascia do? What does it look like? Where is it on the body? And many people have heard that fascial lines connect the whole human system through movement, through function, through life. And we are honored to have a guest whose life is studying fascia, understanding fascia, moving fascia, and helping people become healthier by having them understand fascia flow and how to unlock their nervous system, how to unlock their whole system, and give them a sense of self through fascial release. So we will like to welcome Julia Blackwell onto the Think Fitness Life podcast to discuss everything from neurology to in-depth fascial releases to understanding the fascia.
And so understanding our body's this whole system of balance and pulleys, as well as it's being impacted by literally all of the information we're getting. There's so much. So yay, I'm excited.
Awesome.
We can go.
And we'll dive in right there with that post. And so with that post, and people who might not be watching this or see this, it was a post about TMJ and neck pain. And you came out and said that the pain doesn't really stem from the jaw or the neck, that you have to look lower, and you pointed towards the clavicle, upper chest area, which was a light bulb for me, because when we're talking shoulders or neck or jaw, the first place I'm usually looking is breathing mechanics and the subclavius. And I don't know if that's where, I assume that's where you're going with it, but I want to dive in why you brought in that post in, because I feel like a lot of people, they don't understand the shoulder mechanics or neck. They get frozen shoulder. They get all these neck pains and they're like, oh, it's massage, or I have to treat my jaw, but it's not that. It never comes from that.
Yeah, great question. I think we're mostly operating in this day and age with a very symptom-focused model. And I totally understand and can sympathize with people thinking, oh, well, my back hurts, or oh, my neck hurts. It must be a problem with my back or with my neck. But that's really not the way the body works, especially when we talk about the fascial system, because something that is tight and dehydrated and tense in our fascial system can create pain in a totally different area of the body. And that might be why someone who is experiencing these pains and they're doing foam rolling on their neck area, or they're using a lacrosse ball in their neck area, they're getting massages in their neck area, they're not seeing lasting results. And it's because where they're feeling the pain isn't the actual problem. So I like to show people what I call pain patterns, where we have to go somewhere else in the body that's most likely causing the problem, and it's going to give you relief in the place you're actually feeling it.
And for you, where do you think the major pain pattern spots are, or where do they stem from when you look at someone?
Well, there's so many different ones, but one of the most prevalent ones I see is tension through the front of the body, way more so than the posterior half of our body, because we're humans with eyeballs in front of our head, and we're doing things in front of our body for the most part. Our hands are in front of us. And think about how much time we spend sitting, where our hip flexors are shortened. If we're not sitting with very good posture, we're rounded forward, and now our core is being compressed. The shoulders and the clavicles are tightening, and even the front part of our neck is getting shortened from these prolonged sitting positions, or really anything in that front area of our body. And so if you think about it, most people end up having pain in the back of their body. They have sciatic, SI pain. They have upper back and neck pain. They have all of these things that they keep thinking are in the back. But normally, once you release the front part of the body and balance out those halves, the pain will go away in the back. Essentially, everything in the back is being overstretched or overworked, and it's not the actual problem.
Yeah, it's always interesting when people have those pains. And so I don't know if you know what I do. I'm posture restoration trained. So that's my background. So when I take away tension, but I do it from a different muscle, they just don't grasp the understanding of it. And I shouldn't say just muscle because it's tissue. There's a whole system of tissue that I don't think people understand. And with having you on here, and your area is fascia, you dive into that. Kind of break it down for people what the structure of fascia is and how it blends with the system. Because I think a lot of people just think, oh, they hear plantar fasciitis and they think, oh, it's just the fascia, but they don't really understand what that tissue actually is and how it operates.
Yeah. So I think the simplest visual that I've used time and time again is to think of fascia plastic wrap that wraps around every single thing in your body. So fascia wraps around each muscle fibril, and multiple fibrils make up just one muscle fiber, right? And fascia wraps around each muscle fibril, each muscle group, each bone, tendon, ligament, blood vessel, nerve, organ. It is all wrapped in this intricate three-dimensional plastic wrap suit that we wear on the inside. And it's what's organizing all of the water and material that we have in our body. So depending on how healthy and hydrated you are, humans are somewhere between 60 and 72% water, right? The vast majority of that water is contained within our fascial system. That's why we don't have balloon legs and have all of our water puddled down at our feet, right? Our fascia is what's putting that water in every place it needs to go, as well as all of the material, right? Without fascia, we would go tumbling to the ground in a pile of bones and goo. So it is critical for our shape, our structure, our texture, or posture, if you will, since I know that's your realm of expertise, which is so great. So many people need to know so much more about that. But fascia does so much more than just create that posture or keeping us in an upright position. It's also our water irrigation system. Fascia is how we get water and hydration to all of the tissues and all of the cells in our body, carries nutrients to all of our cells. It's what's distributing force and absorbing impact and shock. It's even, this is one area we can definitely dive into. More and more, they're finding out fascia is also its own communication system. It's essentially mycelium that we have in our human body. So in this one uninterrupted, interconnected system, there are communicative signals and electrical signals that are traveling even faster than the nervous system, and it's communicating completely separate from the nervous system. So it has a lot of really interesting implications for not only physical things, balance, agility, coordination, but also emotional and energetic things that we might be going through, such as stress and trauma.
Yeah. And I assume that you've done an anatomy lab and a cadaver or cut into something. For people who've never seen fascia, it's tough. That stuff is strong. It's not thick, but it is very, very durable. And I think that's one of those, like you mentioned, those things that people don't really realize. And it really encases the tension of a system. And when you say it connects with and talks with others, I've always heard, one piece of fascia can run from the head all the way down to the foot.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. So it's Is it one piece? Yes, but it's a whole system. I hate when people look at the body and they're, oh, let's break it apart, because that's just not how we function. These fascial lines are just going to be intricate across and over things. And that's where it's going to help, I would assume, help positions, help hydration, help that connectivity of, hey, this is talking to the rest of the system, and it's saying, are we tense? Are we not tense? Are we compressed? It kind of goes off. Are you familiar with the biotensegrity model?
Mhm.
You get compression of that fascia, and it's just we are going to have problems somewhere else in the system.
Yeah, because fascia wraps around every single thing that we have, it's therefore going to influence the position and function of everything. And it's really it is the only system that overlaps with all of the others. It wraps around the bones, it wraps around nerves, it wraps around blood vessels. And so by improving the health of your fascial system, you end up being able to improve the health of all of your systems simultaneously and allow them to communicate better with each other.
Yeah. And then when it comes to training, people always, oh, I got this. I'm sure you've seen it, the hip flexor release thing. I
Yeah.
don't know what your thoughts are on it. I always take a pretty interesting stance. I know you're going to release it, or I don't want to say release the hip flexor, but you're going to influence pressure on the system, which might feel good for a time being, but you're not actually going to inhibit it with these things. And I have lacrosse balls and stuff. And this is where I want to get into, because I sometimes didn't believe in it, then I did believe in it, but I don't believe in it and I don't mean to offend you. I don't believe in it in a way that this is the end answer. Go lie on a foam roller, lacrosse ball, something. I always think you said there's more to the system that you have to take in consideration than just a technique. And I'm sure you get that question a lot. Oh, you're just telling me you're a fascial person, I should just foam roll. And I know what the answer is, but I'll let you dive into that one.
Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head in that really nothing in the body works alone. We have gotten so good in the science and research realm where we know what every single muscle does and what every single cell does, but it's just not the way the body works to be, oh, your only problem is your psoas. This is just a psoas problem,
Mhm.
right? That's not that's not how the body works. Everything has to be working together. It's influenced by so many different things. So I have certainly had many arguments or, debates, whatever you'd like to call it, with people about tools that are meant to just really go hard into one area,
Yeah.
because I guarantee there's other things going on. And especially with something like the psoas or the IT band, things that are meant to create hip stability or a lot of stability in the body, if you go after it really aggressively, it may actually cause more instability in your body. So not a huge fan of
I, I
this.
wanted to get your stance on some of that, because I mean, you've seen it, I've seen it. Athletes come in and it looks like they've been literally beaten on the side of their leg,
Mhm.
and you're like, "What did you do?" And they're like, "Oh, I foam rolled my IT band." You're like, "Holy hell!" And on that question, that bruising, when someone gets that, I think a lot of people like, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
In my opinion, it is not the outcome that we want, for
Mhm.
sure. So fascia, because it's communicating with itself, but also the nervous system, we have to find this balance where when the nervous system starts to feel that there's a threat detected or there's something too aggressive happening, it'll start to resist the change that you're trying to make. And when the body starts to resist whatever you're doing, we end up injuring in some way. And a bruise is an injury, right? It's inflammation. Maybe it's a broken capillary, something like that. So we certainly don't want to be that aggressive. I will not lie to you and say foam rolling, especially in the way that I teach people, is not relaxing, but there is this cap where I normally
Mhm.
say you could bring it up to a 7 out of 10 on whatever your subjective scale is. But once you get past that 7 out of 10, your body again is going to be resisting the positive change that you're trying to make. So if you walk away with any foam rolling or any tool where you're getting lots of bruises from it, you're certainly going too hard and your body is not able to really integrate what you're doing.
Yeah, a lot of times people think that's the goal. Oh, I'm going to foam roll. I should do this hard enough to get bruising because similar to cupping, oh, that visually that looks I'm doing something. And curious if your method of foam rolling.
Mhm.
Let's dive into that.
Sure.
Because I want to hear. I've done the traditional foam rolling, 10-15 seconds, all this. Yours is going on a RPE scale of 7 to 10. Describe your method. Where are you taking this with people?
So, what I've found over the years working with fascia is it's important to come at it with this specific combination. So, that combination is compression, which of course is exactly what it sounds right, compressing one area of the tissue, and then involving active movement enough to cross fiber as many fascial fibers as possible. So, with your standard rolling, let's take the quads, for example. You're in a plank position, you've got your thighs on the roller, and most people are simply pulling with their arms up and
Mhm.
down so that they're going with the grain of the muscle and some of those grains of the fascial fibers as well. So, that's fine if you want to create a little bit of heat in your muscle, but it's certainly not going to affect any deeper layers of fascia or communicate on fascia in that deeper level to repattern it or change it in any way. So, what I will tell people instead is okay, find a spot on your quad that feels tight or tender, sore, whatever, and then stay on that one spot. See if you can relax your body into it and then start moving. So, bend your heels back towards your glutes. You're doing a hamstring curl a few times. Keep your knees bent at 90 degrees and rock your heels side to side. And now we're cross fibering across those fascial fibers. And there's actually a specific cell in our fascia called a fasciocyte, great name, right? That they have shown really only gets activated through shearing of fascial fibers, which shearing is just another way of, I think cross fibering is a bit easier to understand. But when those fascial fibers are being sheared, that's going to start the process within the fasciocyte to produce hyaluronic acid, which is full body grease for your joints and for your muscles. And so, if you're only going with the grain of the muscle, we're not going to activate those fasciocytes and really rehydrate areas that we want to. So, it's really important to combine all of these things together. The active movement is also what allows change to happen more quickly in our body. Most of the modalities or treatments that we're used to or what we're familiar with are very passive. We put on an electrical stim machine, we lay on a table and have someone else try to change our body for us. And it can help over time. But if you really want change to happen quickly, doing the movement yourself, essentially being a participant in your own healing process, is what really makes this transition and this change happen so much faster.
Yeah, that the self sense is where most, I would say, coaches are going nowadays that are up to speed in this realm of, hey, if you really want to change a pain or a tightness or an injury, it's it's not doing anything that's outside the body. It's all intrinsic. And really it's you nailed on the head here. You have to be able to move yourself in positions to understand that shear because there's no device that's going to do it for you. There's no person. Yes, massages feel great, but if you can't do that to yourself and actively release that without being like, hey, I have to go to a massage every single day, to me that always tells us to me though that system's doing something. If it's getting tight every day and you need a massage, that's a problem.
Absolutely.
And where you get into the shearing, so I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of my questions I was going to ask. I think this was years ago. I think I read something about that. And it basically said that foam rolling, I don't want to say didn't really do much, but you had to put enough force to actually increase that shearing action. And I think when a lot of people, I talk, oh, I'm going to interview someone on foam rolling fashion. People, oh, that's kind of like weird. Like we all know how to foam roll. And I disagree. It's like, no, you don't, because there's not enough force going down or side to side movement to create that shearing force. And that's really what we're looking to get out of, if you're saying foam rolling, it's not just a, hey, I'm rocking back and forth. Yeah, that will do something, But to really influence the fascia, that shearing is the most important part.
Yeah, we could even argue whether or not fascia can be quote unquote released, right? What we're mostly doing
Mm-hmm.
is rehydrating and repatterning. And
Okay.
so when you're foam rolling just back and forth in the standard way, or you're just rolling around aimlessly, I mean, we've all been there at some point in our lives.
Yeah.
We're just kind of rolling around, not knowing what we're doing. Yeah, nothing much is happening. Again, you might be creating a little bit of heat in the muscles. It could be great as a warm up. It could be great as a quick cool down if you're just trying to get some fluid out of the system. But ultimately, if you're looking to relieve pain, if you're looking to improve mobility, if you're really trying to rehydrate and improve the overall health of your fascia, you have to compress it again as much as you can up to that 7 out of 10, and then start moving and shearing in as many directions as possible. Because if you think about that 3-dimensional plastic wrap suit, right? Just rolling over the top is not doing a whole lot. We've got to pull the wrinkles out of the plastic wrap and start getting fluid in between those layers, which you're not going to get with your standard rolling.
And that's where I feel bad with people that are just doing this and they, oh, I foam roll, but nothing's changed, because they don't know. And hopefully after listening to this, they can take a different approach at it and be, oh, I'm going to get more out of my foam rolling or myofascial or whatever we want to call it. And you made a good point. I think from here on out, I'm not going to use the word release. I think that's a kind of a dumb term, because you're right. We aren't releasing anything. We're not cutting anything. We're not taking away something, because that fascia is there for a purpose, and we need it to be strong when it needs to be strong. So it's almost like we're doing a disservice to people when they're saying, hey, oh, we need to release this muscle, or we need to whatever it is. So it's more like, no, we're allowing this tissue to kind of rejuvenate and rehydrate and regenerate its ability to function, and not just become this one dimension tight tension tone thing. Because our human bodies basically run off pressure and tension, and when something gets tight, it senses that because it compresses. So then you're using more compression to allow that pumping mechanism to decompress. So it's like, we can't use release. I think that's a great, and I'm going to kind of say here, like, it's a dumb word, and I'll be at fault because I've been using that for, a while when it comes to, oh, we need to release fascia or release this. It's like, no, we're not doing that, because there's nothing bad about any of the fascia that's tight, because we need that when I go to squat, run, or do whatever I need to. I need that.
Yeah, absolutely. I use it insofar as people understand what I'm saying when they hear something like fascia release. But yeah, I've been teaching practitioners the last 2 years, and I'm always like, guys, listen, we're not really releasing anything.
Yeah.
We're not even really doing much. We're acting as the tool of compression, but that person is doing the movement. And what we're really doing is creating the most ideal environment for the body to heal itself, which is exactly what you're saying. Is the body knows how much pressure and tension needs to be there. We're just trying to create the best environment for it to go back to where it's used to being, or where it's used to functioning.
Yeah. And that's where the hydration you mentioned earlier, that hydration aspect comes in. And I didn't even realize how much of the fascia played in a role with hydration, and to the ability to, if someone's not hydrating, that's a problem in itself, because now let's say you have an individual who's not hydrating, they expect their body to function, and then their tissues become tight. They just sense this ball of tightness, and they go and do something, run, whatever. Now all of a sudden you create this pain. You create shin splints, whatever tightness, hip flex. I don't know. You said earlier, there could be thousands of sites where we go. This is the mechanism that really, I think, hits home when it comes to, if you are foam rolling or any other sort of manual myofascial release, is your body needs to stay hydrated.
Yeah. And the key here, which I'm glad we're diving into, it's not simply about drinking more water, although of course you should, right? We all need water. But there are two mechanisms or rather two areas that we need to look at for ultimate hydration. So number one is movement. Our body isn't going to get water to all of the places through these little strands in our fascial system without moving. And I don't even mean working out, but simply hanging on a bar, walking around, lifting your arms above your head, twisting a little bit, any type of movement you can do is going to help get water to areas that you need. So unfortunately, if you're sitting at a desk all day, adding another Nalgene of water isn't really going to help you. It's just going to send you to the bathroom every 30 minutes because there's nowhere for that water to go except for out.
Uh-huh.
And then secondly, let's go back to, I know we're kind of getting off the quote unquote release train, but think about a crumpled up ball of plastic wrap. If you've got an area of your body that's really tight, it's going to push a lot of water out. And even if you dumped a bottle of water over that ball of plastic wrap, how much water is really getting into the center of it? Little to none, right? So we have to be able to get through that really tight layer, pull the wrinkles out of the plastic wrap, if you will, to also hydrate that area. I'll throw another analogy at you too. I've also talked about fascia being a wet sponge. If your whole body was encased in a wet sponge, you can twist and bend, move any direction you want. We have this great recoil and resilience, right? You can twist that sponge anyway, it's going to bounce back to its original position. But there's all different ways that fascia can become unhealthy. And we start to develop areas that are functioning more like a dry sponge. And think about how difficult it is to move a dry sponge. The chance of injury is going to go way up. The lack of movement is going to become very evident. And usually pain is one of the biggest things that will send people on this journey to rehydrate. But those are really critical to understand, because a lot of times that hydration is moving out of your body or an area of your body slowly. So you may have no idea that an area is starting to get dehydrated until suddenly you go up for a run and have knee pain, or you bend down to tie your shoe and you throw out your back. And we all think, oh my gosh, all I did was go out that one time. Well, that you probably did it thousands and thousands of times and didn't realize that integrity or the texture of that fascia was changing until one day your body was like, we can't do this safely anymore. And you're going to get that pain signal.
See, I've never looked at it from that aspect of, yes, you take in water or electrolytes, you're hydrating the system, but where exactly is it going? So it's
Right.
that's a whole new approach that you look at. Like, this is why they tell you to move. This is why movement in multi directions and rotation is the most important. You said that sponge, how do you get the water out of a sponge? You rotate it and you squeeze it out. And then how I think of it is, okay, when you squeeze it out, it's pumping out, but then to refill it as it unrotates, it expands back and it can absorb more water, nutrients, all that. And it gives you a different aspect of even my training and how you look at certain people's training. Do you start adding more rotation into influence that rotary aspect of tissues? Because that's just, how our body works. It's built off of rotation. We're not just moving in a planar front and back way, even though life is that. When people are sitting at a desk, they're just forward back. That's it. Majority of the day. So people listening wonder why you're going to get tight backs and all this stuff, because you're not allowing that expansion of fluid in and out to rehydrate these cells. And with that, so you mentioned kind of water. It's just not just drinking water. For you to hydrate, or your recommendations, what else do you have people do when it comes to hydrating the fascia? So if, let's say some of our clients or anyone's listening who's, hey, I really want to learn how to hydrate my fascia better, where would you start them?
Well, I certainly would again recommend movement, just little doses, even if it's 2 minutes after every hour that you're sitting. And it can be a quick walk around, it can be a quick dance party. There's actually some interesting research that is saying that quick 2-minute burst and the consistency of that movement is helping way more than one workout. So, maybe you work out every day for an hour, but if the rest of the time you're sitting, there might actually be more benefit to you to spread that movement throughout the day to get your body more consistently pumping. You're saying when you twist and you bend, we're squeezing out the dirty water of the sponge, right? We all have cellular waste and things that need to be carried out of the body. And we need to be able to bring that fresh lymph fluid, blood flow, and extracellular fluid, which is the water within our fascial system. We have to bring that new fluid in. And then our body is functioning like a pump instead of an aquarium where the pump stopped working. And now things are very stagnant and growing gross things on the side. Yeah, we've got a definitely the movement component, of course, fascia release, because if I described it well enough, you realize you're doing a lot of movement in working on your fascia, right? There's movement involved in that. So we're getting that as well. And then, nutrition's not my full area of expertise, but I always recommend people to eat as many fruits and vegetables as they can because there's water in fruits and vegetables. And we have a real epidemic going on with so much processed food and things that there's no water that our body is absorbing in these things that we eat. So if we can eat more of our water, that's also a way that we can help hydrate our fascia.
Yeah, when we get a lot of runners that come in, and it's just fascinating that you hear what they eat, and you're just like you're perplexed at what you just said. It's just okay. Well, no wonder your tissue quality is poor, or you're getting shin splints or plantar fasciitis. It boggles my mind. But then you get into this realm of injury and pain, and whether things get torn or not torn, you're going to hear this, right? Or they come back from an injury. Oh, I have to break up the scar tissue. And I totally get that. But yet again, here's another word I don't like is scar tissue. Because if you look at the literature, when the body's healing, the tissue's actually growing back stronger to prevent that further tear, further injury. And I would assume that's becoming fascia too. But when it becomes that strong and rigid, you still have to get it hydrated and moving around and pliable. But when you get to that realm of people with, hey, they've had so much pain or an injury in areas, what do you start to do to treat that? And where do you look at, hey, what is this system doing? Because you mentioned earlier from that pain, stress, trauma to create this, because some people might not have an acute injury. This has been over time.
Yeah, wow. So many different ways to go into that question. It really depends. So, if someone had a surgery, I
Mhm.
may actually spend more time working around that specific place because of what happens. It's trauma. It's trauma to the tissue. I want to make sure things are gliding again, everything is hydrated, and essentially getting the nervous system to realize that they have access to certain ranges of motion again and that it's safe to move in that direction, whatever that is. So I may spend more time on more of the area of injury for once, but a lot of it I can see with posture. I'm sure you can even do this better than I can, but when I look at someone's standing position or even how they move, fascia is going to move bones out of position. So, based on if I'm seeing a rotation in their trunk, is one shoulder higher than the other? Is one hip higher than the other? Those will tell me a lot of information on compensation patterns and where fascia may be more restricted and creating these really strange patterns. So, yeah, I mean, low back pain is such a good example because so many people have experienced it and found probably little to no relief with your classic either working directly on the back or stretching the hamstrings. That one actually makes my eye twitch a little bit. That's one of the worst things, in my opinion, you could probably do for your back
Oh,
if you
why?
have back pain.
I agree with you fully, but doctors still to this day stretch hamstring. Every PT that a kid comes in, oh, I've been stretching my hamstrings. But I want you to dive into that and tell the people, because most people look at me like I have 10 faces when I say that.
All right. I've never made this analogy before, but I'm going to give it a go. So imagine you have a little cardboard box, a shoe box or something,
Mhm.
and that's the pelvis. And each of the four corners of the box have a rubber band that go down and attach to the floor. So ideally, when our pelvis is in a neutral position, everything is nice and even tension throughout everything. But for the vast majority of people, they either are overworking their quads because we use them so much with really any sport and athletic thing that we do, or we're sitting, and that tension in the quads is going to create a lot of shortness. So if you think about the first two rubber bands in front shortening, the rubber bands in the back are going to start overstretching and feel so tight. And that's what's happening in your hamstrings is they feel tight, and maybe you stretch them for a minute and your back feels better momentarily, but that's not the actual problem. Once you release the quads, the vast majority of people already feel a huge and lasting difference in their low back. It's crazy. And then the adductors are probably the second place I go because they attach up through the pelvic floor, up through the core. There's one of those interconnected fascial lines that go all the way up to your neck, but it influences pelvic position quite a bit. And so if there's uneven tension between the two, or even sometimes just releasing both, makes such a huge difference for low back pain. And we just have to learn where to go in order to relieve these pains that we think are something else. But most of the time, if you keep stretching the hamstrings with an area that's already overstretched, not only are you not going to solve your problem, but you might actually make your back pain worse because you're further entrenching this movement pattern that got you there in the first place, if that makes sense.
No, totally. That's what I tell people.
Okay.
And when people are listening to this, they're going to probably have to rewind it and listen to it again because they've been told that stretching is sort of the best way. And after years of kind of going through education, learning, I kind of pulled back from that. Like, stretching doesn't really do much, even from the research literature standpoint. Stretching a tight, tense tissue or system, a left system or right system, is not going to do anything. Yet it's so prescribed. Every time you hear, you like doctors are, oh, stretch it, it feels tight, stretch it. Like, that's not going to change anything from a systematic bone or muscle or fascial standpoint. You have to really decompress, hydrate, rotate, and train the body to use these muscles and these lines. When I say muscles, obviously, you know that there's fascia intertwined with them. I think that whole system kind of comes in too. But if
Right.
there are people don't understand, like, fascia is with the muscle. These lines are moving with muscle pulls and orientation of their fibers as well. So that's stretching just
I mean, yeah, I've lost count. I've had a practice for, I think it's coming up on 11 years. And I've seen more people than I can possibly count that came from PT and were like, yeah, I've been doing these series of stretches. And my first question is always, has it helped? And they're like, well, I've been doing it for 6 months or 2 years or whatever it is. And I'm okay, well then no. If you haven't seen a difference in 2 weeks time, there's a problem with what you're doing. And again, especially with things, even plantar fasciitis is a good one. People are recommended, oh, throw your toe up on a wall and then crank into it to stretch your calf. And it makes plantar fasciitis worse a lot of the times. And so people need to know this because they're like, well, what the heck? I've been doing everything that I've been told to do. And at best, it's managing this problem. And we have to get past this managing pain. I love this. We're just talking about terms that we hate right now. I hate the term pain management. Let's not manage it. Let's eliminate it. What are we doing?
Well, that's right. And it doesn't really add up to, hey, this is what's causing the pain. And this is really where it's a great segue. We're going to take it next, is because that pain is something else. That pain is coming from your brain because of whether it's pattern, emotion, past history. That's what's driving some sort of tension in the body. So it's like that word pain that's just a symptom of telling you, okay, there's something going on in your overall system that's creating a posture that's now allowing the system to be locked up. And you mentioned that's really where your kind of realm is going now. Yeah, it's foam rolling and fascia, but you're looking at it from that stress, pain, and trauma. Dive into where you feel that where your works are intertwining with that, and what you see of, hey, if my upper chest is tight, that might just not be a chest issue. It might be something further.
Oh, yeah. It's such a fascinating part. I spent a long time working with a lot of professional athletes and even recreational athletes. And there is this mentality of, okay, there's this pain. I want to solve it. Let's focus on the biomechanical stuff, the clinical stuff. But there is such a wider net of what's happening in our body that we have to start taking into account. And that is this stress, anxiety, the trauma element. There is more and more research all the time to support this, but for the longest time, we had separated these two. There's a physical problem that you have, here's an emotional problem that you have, and there are people at either end of the spectrum, but we really can't separate the mind-body connection. It's so powerful. That's the way our body works. And I mentioned at the beginning, fascia has its own system of communication, right? So there are a lot of free nerve endings in the fascia, but there's also proprioceptors. And most people are familiar with proprioceptors insofar as they are the things that tell us where our body is in space, right? They have a lot to do with balance, coordination, things like that. But they're essentially receptors that are taking in all information about both your external and your internal environment. It is a 24/7 feedback loop. And we have 10 times as many proprioceptors in our fascia than our muscles. The fascia is the proprioceptive rich tissue that we have. And so, of course, externally, right, proprioceptors are essentially making sense of the world around us and how our body's moving through that space. But then internally, it's also taking stock of what's happening inside of us. So if we have a lot of chronic stress, anxiety, PTSD, things like that, your fascia is going to read that through the proprioceptors and respond according to that internal environment as well. So the brain, kind of going back to the nervous system, of course, fascia and the nervous system talk to each other, right? They just have their own separate elements at times as well. The brain can't tell the difference between what's a real threat and what's a perceived threat. So you could crash your mountain bike and your fascia is going to respond like, let's brace for impact. We're about to sustain an injury. But with something like stress or anxiety, your brain is likely going to interpret that as a threat, right? And so fascia is going to start to brace for an impact that may never come because we have stress each and every day. And the typical response of fascia is to contract. So we have specific contractile cells within our fascia, and they can contract independent of muscle. So it's not going to be as strong of a contraction. You can flex your bicep and feel your bicep flexing. You may not feel that your fascia is contracting, but it can get stuck in a contracted state. And they've shown that over time, there's a lot of research they cite in The Body Keeps the Score, where contraction of the fascia over time leads to density. And think about how much more difficult it is to move and function with dense tissue. It's kind of like your whole body is a vacuum seal bag that's slowly getting the air sucked out of it. And that bag is just thickening over time. It's going to be harder for your lymph system to flow. It's going to be harder for blood to flow. It's going to be harder for nerves to fire, joints to move. The list goes on because it's this wrapping around everything. And so I have seen more and more people impacted by stress these days, and it's resulting in a lot of chronic pain and a lot of chronic tension. So understanding that how we're feeling, every thought, experience, emotion that we've experienced is being logged by our fascial system, and it's going to respond according to what we're feeling.
And that's where people don't realize what's going on. And it's not even from an injury, acute injury. Like, you just throw those to the side, right? Because those are manageable. If you crash a bike, I get it's going to happen. But we all have anxiety, stress, and these emotions. That's what we're built off of. And when people aren't expecting that sort of tension to be driven from that, or they don't realize it, this is where the whole system health starts to just kind of get condensed and compressed. And this is where people really need to realize more of just how the body works from a pump mechanistic standpoint of, hey, we need to push fluid around. We need to compress. We need to expand. We need to have flow. We need to have decompression of that tension you were saying. But to take a step back and really think, okay, well, how do I control fascia? I really need to start understanding my own neurology. What's driving my stress? What's driving my system to ramp up that stiffness? Because we see it all the time. People walking around with that stiff body syndrome. They're going towards that. And you're like, how do we got to get them to stop? And it's hard because you and I are really, we're movement specialists, but we're really neurologists. We're attacking this because we have to work with someone's neurology from a sense standpoint of their muscles, who they are, where they are, and how they come in each day. Not everyone's going to come in, I feel great. No, hey, this thing just went bad in my life, or work was a tough day. That impacts the whole system. And a lot of times, this is why I have to go deep dive into these things, because people just talk about, oh, foam roll. Great. And people listen to this, they say, I'm just going to go foam roll and nothing changed. Well, no. That's going to help. But if you can get a state of shutting down your sympathetic nervous system and getting more flow and relax, and then you go foam roll, we can maybe get more out of this. But I like how you bring that in, saying, hey, this system just is talking to the brain 100% of the time, and
Yeah,
it's going to put down more tissue.
Yeah, most people are very disconnected from the body. That's social programming right there. We are really taught to outsource our trust and in our body to someone else. And so a lot of what I'm doing is simply bringing people back into their body. So with a foam rolling move, hey, you can't check out. You have to breathe deeply right now. You have to move intentionally. You have to feel the sensation that's going on. And more times than I can possibly count, I've had so many people have emotional releases in the process of releasing their fascia, and they're like, I have no idea what this is. I don't know where this comes from. Or my particular favorite, people will start crying and they're like, I'm sorry. Why are you apologizing?
And that's a good thing, because I do a subclavian or Simpson fascia release, and people, when they get out of it and they realize that they can have neck movement again, or any sort of movement, they can see that, you can see them almost have this emotional reaction that, and we're just like, hey, we just gave you 50 more degrees and made you feel better. We know what's going on, but to them, it might have been years. I had one client, years, her shoulders working, and then she got released and could feel air coming through the upper chest. And she had an emotional moment, and you kind of have a good feeling when that happens, because you just almost gave someone their emotional life back. They're so distraught that movement patterns or breathing is so thrown off, and they're in pain, and you give them something and it just pulls them back in. And that's where we're treating someone's overall health, not just, hey, I care about your muscle, I care about your tissue density. I really don't know. But then you mentioned, this is another one of the things that I'll go off on tangent with, but that disconnect, that disassociation, dysautonomia is really running, in my opinion, rampant nowadays with society, social media, all this stuff, and really pulling people back into that sense and giving themselves the sense of themselves back, so they don't just feel like they're auto programmed. And I think a lot of professions and quick fixes, right? You see on Instagram, oh, buy this program, do this really quick, this is going to work. That doesn't do it. And we're just auto programming something like, oh, you're hurt, put this e-stim on. Oh, you're hurt, buy this piece of plastic. That's not going to help that system overall.
Yeah, I mean, I ask so many questions whenever I work with people, and I can tell really quickly the people that have a higher level of disconnection than others. And I think it's so important to try to pull those people back, because I worked with this lady, I don't know how many years ago it's been, but she came in and she was, okay, I have back pain. My doctor says I have a herniated disc in my back and it hurts every morning. And I said, cool. What does it feel right now? And she was like, well, my back hurts. It hurts every morning. And I was like, okay, hold on. No. In this moment right now. And she was like, my back hurts. My doctor says I have a herniated disc. We couldn't get past this initial conversation of what are you actually feeling in your body? Can you tell me if it's sharp? Is it achy? Does it radiate? Does it feel like a nerve? Does it feel like a muscle? I have so many different ways of asking questions. And I see over time, people are, oh, yeah, it does feel tingly in a good way right now. It feels warm because there's blood flow. And you can see it's a learned thing, where if you really focus on reconnecting with the body, you absolutely can. We've just been programmed not to. And so it's a amazing skill that I think everyone needs to have, because our body is incredibly accurate with the feedback that it's giving. We can learn so much from the sensations that we're feeling, and we can heal ourselves in the majority of cases. Of course, there are times where we need other people and we need other opinions, and we might have to do a deeper dive, but the body really knows how to heal itself in most cases. And We just have to learn to interpret those messages correctly.
And really about pulling back those layers. Those questions are the most important thing you can ask someone, because people get hyper fixated on, oh, I had an MRI, X-ray, my disc, but they don't know the mechanisms. And that's what this, these conversations are all about, is like, right, I care about foam rolling, but I always want to know the mechanisms of how to help someone's system create less tension and feel better. That's the end of the day. That's why when you came, like, oh, I want to talk about trauma, stress, let's go. I don't care. I care about performance, but I don't, right? Because there's a bigger conversation to be had about this. And then when you ask people those questions, and sometimes they give you the dumbfounded look because no one's ever asked them those questions. What did it feel like? And they don't know any reference to it. That's another signal for me. I'm like, oh, okay, this person is maybe disconnected from sense. And then you give them some, references. Does it feel like you stubbed your toe or something? And you had mentioned the warming one. And that one I get often because that one trips people out. All of a sudden, right, you go to do one area and the muscle that we're trying to inhibit or expand, release, air quotes, if you're not watching, that one, all of a sudden they're, oh, it's warm and it's burning. And they have no idea. They're like, I feel it, but I don't know if it's pain. In your mind, kind of explain that.
Oh, man. There's a lot of different things and it's so subjective, right? I still will hear comments from people that I've worked with that I'm, oh, that's new. I didn't even know that sensation was a possibility, or maybe where they feel it is something that I'm, oh, that's interesting. I'm just going to make a note of that. But a lot of the warmth is blood flow. I've had a lot of people experience cool rushes, which I've got no research for, but I imagine is a lot of the water and hydration actually coming back into an area. Depending, the nervous system functions in a way that it's, oh, if I'm using this thing a lot, the nerves are going to fire well. If you don't use areas a lot, they'll start to atrophy, just like muscle. And so some of that burning or tingling might just be reinnervation of nerves. There's all kinds of different things that can happen. Breathing changes, totally different areas of the body change. Although once you understand some of those interconnected fascial lines, those don't usually surprise me. Right. Because something at the bottom can affect something at the top. But there's, again, lots of people have all kinds of different emotional responses. And I find that they happen all over the body. You hear a lot about, oh, emotions are stored in the hips. And it's, oh, if only the body were that organized. Right. Oh, here's this trauma, I'm just going to send it on down. There certainly are a lot of emotional releases that I've experienced myself, as well as clients in that area. But I've had emotional release happen from my bicep on my right side, or a neck spot, or a rib spots. It really doesn't matter. It's just emotions are energy in motion. And anywhere where the body has suddenly become more dense and restricted, not only are physical things like blood flow and fascial water being restricted, but energy can't flow. And our bodies are made of energy, and we need to get these things continually moving. And so it is very common that once you get things moving, these feelings, these flashbacks, these emotions just come pouring out. And we often think we need to name them. And it's, no, we just let it out. Whatever you're experiencing, let your body experience it to the fullest. And then it's no longer stuck in your body. It's such a freeing, amazing experience to do that.
Looking for personalized workout plans? Whether you prefer to train at home or hit the gym, try a 14-day free trial of the Think Fitness Life mobile app. Get customized workouts, nutrition guidance, and coaching from a qualified professional who will be in your corner every step of the way. Visit www.thinkfitnesslife.com to start your free trial today. That's www.thinkfitnesslife.com.
And then you can create a new emotion with that pattern or movement to kind of override the previous one. Because a lot of emotions are just experiences we've had in that time or position, even though we don't realize it, right?
Mhm.
I'm not saying that, hey, we're in the gym doing a bicep curl and you had it like an emotion. Probably not the case. Though if
Yeah.
it was, I mean, okay. But it's more or less going to be some experience, some emotional event that happened that you were in a certain position. That's just what your body remembered from that position. And when you get into that inhibition release, all of a sudden you're, whoa, did that just trigger something in the brain to say that released this? And all of a sudden I'm getting this emotion. And that's where in my world of PRI training, we're trying to elicit a new experience with different muscle patterns and those new emotions to bridge that gap of, hey, this is your system. You're okay. We don't need to go into fight or flight. We can change it. And I think that's really what it comes down to. And I know a lot of people in it coming up in the ranks are just, they don't understand it. They're like, oh, it's all about muscle. But when you get into this neurology conversation, it changes everything because we're just treating the whole human, not just, oh, we got to look at your hip flexor fascia. I care about it, but I don't.
Right. Right. That's such an amazing way to put it. I think you and I do something similar, even though it's in different ways, and
Mhm.
haven't heard it phrased like that. It's amazing. That's great.
And that's where, for you coming on, it's always interesting to hear because when you know how we do this as coaches, we read, oh, they're a fascist specialist or a fascial specialist, and it's okay. Does this person just foam roll? And it's like, no. Usually there's a lot, right? But there's some people out there that will just be like, I'm the foam roll guru. Cool. But when you sit down and talk and you realize that there's more in depth to it, that we're all treating the same systems with a little bit different outlooks, but same goal in mind. I'm sure you do some myofascial, some foam rolling with rotation in different positions that get the same emotional experience that some of the stuff I do. It's just a different approach. And some people might need those different approaches because, right, it's not just, oh, I'm better than you because I do this, or you're better than me. It's like we might have to combine them and do a little bit of everything to really understand, like, hey, this is how this system's just playing to this person's brain.
Yeah, everybody may have a different entry point, and I certainly start the majority of people with, "Hey, let's just start with foam rolling, or let's work on
Mhm.
the fascia in these areas, and we're gonna focus on the physical part of how are you feeling?" Right? Is your pain improving? Are you recovering faster? Are you feeling more mobile and just less tense overall in your body? But there's all of these things that start to creep in, positive things that creep in over time. You know, we've been talking a lot about stress and that tension that it creates throughout the whole body. So I've noticed that over time, when you do this type of foam rolling, where normally when you feel that much sensation in your body, it's a bad thing. And so we all can react in certain fight, flight, or freeze, or even fawn ways when we feel sensations. But in this specific instance, it's like, okay, well, we're going to feel a lot of sensation, releasing your hip flexor. But if while you're doing it, you are breathing deeply through your diaphragm, you are slowly and intentionally moving and you're staying in your body, and you're going through whatever range of motion you can go through while feeling safe, over time, you end up changing some of your stress responses and improving your resilience to stress. And when people start to notice these changes and they'll start asking questions, then we get to dive
Mhm.
into the whole other realm of what's possible when you no longer have that stress just living inside your body in the way that it has been.
Yeah. It's remarkable once people get to that point of realization and their mind is blown because they're seeing a whole new side of things. And for you, you mentioned foam roll. What other techniques do you do for fascial release or fascia treatment?
Yeah, so I do have a practice in Golden, Colorado, and I mostly compress fascia with my foot, which my clients lovingly refer to as being stepped on.
Okay.
But essentially, I'm being a human foam roller. So I'm helping find areas that are dehydrated and tense, and I'm compressing them at certain angles. But my client is still twisting and moving, and I'm just following them and helping them shear some of these fascial restrictions. But ultimately, they're doing most of the work. So if you can't see me in person, I'm teaching the same movements and the same type of directional compression through things like foam rollers, lacrosse balls, maybe a Coregeous ball, something that's a little bit more squishy to get into the organs. But it's the principles are the same, right? We want to be releasing fascia in the most efficient way possible and in the areas that need it the most. So as long as you're following those things, it doesn't really matter if it's me or a foam roller for the most part.
Now, for you, what I gotta ask, what's the difference between the hands and the feet? Is it a pressure thing that you can exert more, or?
A couple different things. So one, I can add a significantly more tough compression with my foot, but at the same time, there's a larger surface area on the foot. So adding that much compression over the whole foot is normally not nearly as intense as, can you imagine that much pressure being put in by an elbow or a thumb? You would bruise for sure. So
Oh yeah.
incredibly, even though I step on people, I have bruised like one person in 11 years, and they failed to tell me that they had RA. So that was a pretty
Oh.
significant
Yeah,
thing.
that must have been a little bit. Whoa.
So I've had a few debates with other practitioners and massage therapists where they're like, oh, bruising's normal. I know we've touched on this already. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, how would you explain then that I can fully stand not always, but sometimes I can stand my full body weight on people and I don't bruise them at all, because it's about that slow movement and then or the slow adding of compression, but then ultimately they're doing the movement and their nervous system is giving the go ahead for any changes that we're trying to make. So it's certainly not me uh, trying to change their body for
Yeah.
them, if that
Well,
makes
I mean, that sounds like a good debate to listen to. You're gonna have one side be, oh no, it's good because they're gonna go in and hammer someone down, right? You're creating most of that, not you, but like a person who's manually pushing that pressure and it's creating that bruising, whether or not like, you're bruising capillaries or that person's not hydrated, so the tissues are reacting differently, and you're just taking a different approach. Like, no, I don't think you should bruise it. And honestly, if you would ask me what side to pick, I would have to go not just because you're here, but like on the side of you shouldn't bruise, because that's the bruising tells me that system went to too much stress, and
Yep.
that's not what we're trying to do. And I'm sure you've gotten a deep sports massage. I've had those too, and I haven't bruised, because if you do it right and have that right dense pressure, you're not like jamming on tissues. And that's one of my things with cupping. I don't know if you have a stance on it. I'm not really for it. I think it's cool, but I see people when they come out sometimes, because they'll do it themselves, and they're having like dark spots, almost as black as my shirt. And
Sure.
that's not really that good. But to them, I know it feels good, right? Is a placebo effect. Like, oh, yeah, but I'm pulling blood to that area. It's like, well, you shouldn't be doing it until you're black and blue bruised. That doesn't seem good to me, but
Certainly not with a lot of consistency.
yeah.
So cupping is picking up the first couple layers of fascia, right? And creating some space where you may have a lot of stagnant blood or lymph or,
Yeah.
any of those things. And so it can help get things moving, but you are going to get an inflammation response from something that's that intense and is pulling that much fluid into one area. So I'm not sure exactly where my stance is actually, but I certainly wouldn't recommend doing it with a lot of consistency, because the inflammation response can be a really helpful, it's a necessary part of healing, but to subject yourself to that on a regular basis is certainly not my recommendation. Even with foam rolling, if I tell people, if for any reason you got sore, the next day you're feeling sore, well, one, you went too hard, but two, wait until you no longer feel sore before you go again, because this isn't in any way about, again, beating your body into submission. We can't force it to change. Your nervous system has to be like, oh, I feel safe. I can definitely integrate this right now. So,
And that's where I kind of like this game of I kind of choose stances over time, because I know that people get hyper fixated. So if they do cupping or foam rolling, they're going to do it to the nth degree. They're going to go hard. They're going to do it every single day. And that's really just not, I tell people once in a while, that's fine, but I don't want you to rely on these things and feel like you have to do them, because then it becomes a project for people every day. Oh, I feel tight, I have to cup, where it just takes away our whole conversation about, can that person do it and keep themselves out of pain or whatever, out of tension, with using themselves or just going to see you or I and then walk away like, hey, I feel good, but I'm not waking up the next day bruiser like, damn, what the hell happened in my body?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Sure.
and what really also another thing like I want to mention, what we get out of foam rolling is a lot of people miss, or any sort of myofascial compression or kinesio tape, is that drainage of fluid. We're not talking just water, but lymphatic fluid. So you're helping your overall system. And this is where, going to the beginning, I that when you're talking about that clavicle, I mean, we have all this drainage of lymphatics come through the subclavian and the thoracic outlet and inlet, or whatever you want to call it, all that area. It's so important that people keep this tissue, this system moving.
Yeah, the lymphatic system is a low running hose. It's all in the superficial fascia. And so, of course, your health of your fascia is going to affect the lymphatic system. But yeah, if any tension in your fascia is going to put a bunch of kinks in those hoses. And so if you're going to go really, really after it in an area of tension, we have to make sure the lymphatic pathways are open, because we're releasing things that might be stagnant, right? That cellular waste, possibly toxins. Usually, toxins are stored in a lot of fat cells and things like that. If we are releasing any of those things, they have to have somewhere to go. So it depends on the person. A lot of fascial release moves that I show will get that lymphatic drainage going. But if you're really feeling on top of it, I love doing Dr. Nichols' fascial lymphatic release things even before you do your fascial release session. That stuff is so important. Just get all of the fluids going and have those drainage pathways open, and you'll feel a lot better after you do your fascial release as well.
Yeah. It's all that stuff's more than just releasing a tight muscle, whatever people think it is. Way more.
I know. Yeah, I know. We get really excited that we've learned one. Yeah, think of social media. It's do this one thing.
That's right.
To solve this problem. It's like, oh man, I'm sorry, guys. That's unfortunately not the way it works.
Some things, right? Not humans. Humans just don't work that. And I think that's a hard thing for people to grasp. You could do, you could fix a dishwasher with one thing, right? Because it's mechanical and it's a system that works together, but we're just too integrated from an asymmetrical systematic standpoint that you just can't do one thing, because some machines have moving parts that don't influence the others. We're tied to everything. It's just, and I think it's hard for people to realize that. That's why we do what we do, and we're coaches, and we get on here and we talk about this stuff so people can listen and realize that, oh, their perception of what they thought their human body was, I would say this, they're not wrong, but we're just enhancing their knowledge of how biomechanics work.
And ultimately, I find it to be good news. If anyone's listening and being like, oh my gosh, that makes it sound so complicated. This problem could be anywhere in my body. But once you start to get a few tools on movements that feel good, or working on your fascia in areas that feel good, we have this incredible system that will tell us what's helping and what's not helping. And so really, we are our own how do I want to say it? I know we're the final person that gets to say, this is actually what works for my body. That was not a very eloquent way to say it, but you get what I mean.
Oh, but you're spot on. Because when we feel a position or pattern change, boom, that emotion happens. Oh, I feel less tense. I feel better. That's all that really matters at the end of the day. Sometimes that feeling, just like, oh, I decompressed, I feel good. Boom. People know when they get there.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a long time ago. I want to say it's probably been 8 or 9 years ago. No, it's longer than that. It must be 10 years ago. It was right when I started working with people and I didn't have the knowledge that I have now. I was just starting out. But I was running a lot at the time, and I woke up one day, got out of bed, and my right knee just exploded with pain. And I dropped to the floor. I had no idea what was going on. I limped around the whole day. And at the time I was like, well, maybe I should go to the doctor to make sure I didn't somehow rupture a tendon or something that I was unaware of. And I went to the doctor. She looked at it for about 10 seconds, moved it around, and was, oh, it's IT band syndrome. And I was like, okay, well, I just started doing a job where I'm stepping on people and I'm kind of putting my body in some different positions. Do you think it might simply be a strength thing? Are my hips out of alignment? And she seemed very frustrated that I had questioned her diagnosis and was, no, it's IT band syndrome. I could give you a cortisone shot, or you could
Yeah.
do some stretching, your typical things. And I was like, whoa, okay, this is wild. This is certainly not helpful at all. And so I started working with a foam roller and being like, what happens if I release this specific area of my calf? What happens if I release the other IT band? And I started going through that journey, and I would feel almost immediate changes happening in my body where I could say, ooh, this helped and this didn't. And it didn't take me very long at all to realize I had a very specific tension pattern. And once I worked on that tension pattern, my knee pain went away. And so I think it's really empowering to be like, well, no one else can really do this for me. I get to do it on whatever schedule I want, and my body's going to tell me what it is that I need. And it's great. It's my favorite compliment that I get from clients as well, is they're like, oh yeah, that thing came back and I did the foam rolling that you talked about, and I did a session of just deep breathing, and that pain is gone and it hasn't been back since. It's like, yes, that is the thing.
And that's when you give them the fist bump or high five. You finally got it. Your system understood it. It got
Mhm.
it. Because even tell my athletes, it's like you could, but we put bands in balls between the knees and do all this stuff, right, to get attention. But when you're on a field, you can't do that. You have to be able to maintain sense and awareness and tension through your system when asked need to be. And when people get that sense, it's just like, boom. And you're more happy for them. You're jazzed up because they have this motion. Like, hey, I'm out of pain. I felt great for the rest of the day. You're nailed it. Work's
Yeah,
done.
my hope is that no one needs me forever. If they need help figuring out a
Right.
pattern, or they need support while they're trying to get so much stress out of their body, I want to be that person that's there to help with that. But then ultimately, yeah, it's the best compliment of your work, is that person understands their own body. They feel very connected. They're getting all the right feedback and they can take care of themselves.
And understanding that patterns and positions ebb and flow. It's not a static thing. It's a
Totally.
dynamic thing. So people will come out of patterns, they'll fix it, they'll go back into patterns, and they, whether their lifestyle chooses from an activity standpoint or whatever they're doing, whether they're playing with their kids or moving around, patterns change, and that tension, it ebbs and flows and it comes back. So I always tell people, realize that it's not going to be a permanent fix. It's always you might wake up and it might be there and you have to work at it daily. And I think that's sort of we don't want to have people forever. And then people realize, oh, I did something. I have a new pattern. Things come back. There's that ebb and flow, and people always need to just realize that. And with that being said, I know I've taken up a lot of your time today and I appreciate it.
Oh, it's fun.
Where can people find you? So they can, after they hear this, where can they go? They can see what you got. And I do highly recommend people check out. I think it's like 2 or 3 down on the Instagram. It's about the upper chest, the clavicle, like subclavius area. Check that out, especially if you have TMJ or any shoulder pain, especially shoulder issues or tight necks. That's going to be a part where you want to stem from first before even thinking about massaging or doing something to the upper trap.
100%. Yeah, I'm the most active on Instagram. I'm a crazy busy person, so I do what I can to be on there. That's at Movement by Julia. But if you're curious about how to foam roll or use some of these recovery tools in a way that will actually be more efficient, I do have an online video library called Roller Remedy, where there's over 45 techniques just head to toe that will show you how to release, it's a habit now, but work on areas of your fascia. There are programs that are pain specific in there. So if you have something specific you're dealing with, knee pain, sciatica, neck pain, shoulder pain, elbow pain, there's a lot of programs you can follow in there. And there's also a whole section that are meant to help with stress relief, which is a lot of what we talked about today. If you want to try that out, I have a free 7-day trial that I made for you guys. That's at movementbyjulia.com/podcast. And you can give it a go. And honestly, I think within 7 days, you'll be able to tell whether this is something that you enjoy and want to continue to work on, you usually can feel the difference pretty quick. So I'm happy to help you from afar, wherever you're at, through Roller Remedy.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you coming on and sharing your passions with us today.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.